train teachers integrating technology, mathematics, and other kinds of things.
Let me give you both a card. And is there anything special you'd like to hear from an engineer?
Well, we have a lot in our family, so I hear a lot, but...
Tell us about what you do, basically.
Well, I actually started my own consulting company about a year and a half or 20 months ago. We offer structural, mechanical, electrical engineering. How I got into it was actually in building power plants, and became just absolutely love engineering, love problem solving, I love working with teams. This is going to be repetitive. Is that okay? What I learned very early to mimic the speaker at lunch. I actually thought I was going to be doing I would do my engineering and then change the world, if you will. And it's very much a team sport. Without a good mechanical engineer, I have no pumps to support construction engineering. You learn that if you can't function in a team, all the math and the science doesn't help you if you can't function in a team. And so engineering really involves a lot of good math and science skills and a lot of good social skills to help get your word out there. And I was also really amazed when I got out. I didn't know this about the field, is that how engineers and architects can change how a society does things. The invention of the automobile, the invention of the steamship, the Industrial Revolution. We didn't actually invent the Industrial Revolution, but we certainly were the catalyst that were the way to go. And you look at some of the huge societal changes and realize that, wow, engineers did this. And so I'm just fascinated by this career, even right down to designing anchor bolts. I've been designing anchor bolts now since 1985, and it doesn't matter. I can do garage beams. Get you excited about this. We just finished a boiler going into Russia. The steel's coming out of Thailand. The columns for this boiler are 4 feet deep. The flanges on the columns, this is a standard I-shaped, are 3 inches thick. The load under one of the columns is 1.4 million pounds, and the gas path on the boiler is 38 feet wide by 100 feet high. You can drive tractor trailers into this thing.
How many megawatts is the generator going to be on the other end of that?
I don't know that. I had it in my head a while back. I mostly did structural design.
Is it a cogen facility where it's producing steam for generation?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's cogen.
As well as a manufacturer.
Yep, you have a turbine firing into the HRSG, which feeds the steam to another steam turbine. You take the energy out of the steam to run a turbine. It's a fascinating field. And the other neat part about this is once you develop a little bit of a specialty, the travel that you do. I've been in Athens, Greece, all over the U.S. I worked in Europe for 3 years. It's taken me places I never thought I'd be. Some really harsh mills to some really beautiful plants.
So are you just primarily doing the design work, or are you doing design and implementation, the building process?
Both. Actually do some construction administration, but we aren't the constructors, we're more or less on the design side. Pam, something that might interest you from the teaching side is I got involved with ASCE a while back, and they do this thing called the mousetrap boat race, where we take a mousetrap, 2 sheets of paper, and a roll of tape, and we give it to students broken off into pairs, and they're supposed to build a small craft in a small amount of time. And then while they're doing that, you make a small little poly pool, if you will. It's just some 2x4s with some poly in it, and you have a fan at one end, and the students set their craft in the water, and it blows to the other end, and you time it. And it mimics an engineering education, engineering project. Teamwork, limited amount of budget, limited amount of time, and materials. It is the greatest little school project. You can do it in exactly a 45-minute class. And for me, being a structural engineer or civil engineer, you spend the first part of the class teaching them about structural, environmental, transportation, and geotechnical engineering. I did that for about 6 years, even after ASCE gave me the program. I'm constantly asked to go back and do it for classes. So if there's a need for something like that, I'd be happy to volunteer. So.
Are you located here in Maine?
Portland.
Is that on? Yeah, it's on.
Yep. Did I give you a call?
You did.
Okay.
One of the sessions I attended before lunch, they were briefly talking about how students drop off in their science and math around the 4th, 5th grade, transition between 4th and 5th grade. And I would think projects like this would instill some sort of thought into a child at a young age of, hey, this is fun. Not just fun, but we're doing something.
It's funny you should mention that. I did the mousetrap boat race, and usually a week's worth of classes. I'd go in and do 7 classes, for a week at various schools throughout the southern Maine, and I've been all the way to Rumford and down east. But the record is held by two sixth-grade girls in at Saco Middle School, and all they did, I shouldn't show you, they took a piece of paper, they folded it up like this, put a piece of tape across it, they set the mousetrap in, and it went across in like 2.5 seconds. had young men building rafts, trying to tape up something like this that would be one of the pontoons for a raft, and of course they sink like a stone. But
the main thing is everyone was thinking. They're trying to put some thought into
another interesting point that you bring up is that you look at every successful college coach or high school coach, they get their high school program established, but what do? They go down into the grade school and they start down there, and we should be doing the same thing because you can get them hooked on engineering. I mean, solving problems is it's a fascination with people, and if you get them into that and realize, hey, this is what I have to do. The other point I think to make is I don't think you have to be a genius. I was telling the last group I flunked freshman physics in high school. In college. I'm pretty much a middle B student. I got my share of A's and my share of C's. But I love engineering, and that's really all you need. I always get bummed out when I hear a high school guidance counselor say, well, you need to be really good in math and science. You need to be able to pass math and science. If you've got the passion.
My partner's son went to Northeastern, and he really took off when he fell in love with concrete.
Yeah.
He when they built the concrete boat to put on the Charles, it's that kind of stuff. It's the challenge of it. And when he was growing up, he always had little rector sets under his bed, and it was always the challenge of doing something very quickly. And then he got better and better at all of the mechanics and all of the mathematics to support that passion. So I think you're absolutely right about that. And the more we can involve kids in inquiry, trying to figure things out, trying to make things, the younger the better.
I'm also amazed at how many engineers are willing to go out, in spite of our sect being a little bit introverted. I could call 24 people, and they would gladly go to a high school class and make a presentation if they were just asked. But everybody's so busy these days, you just need to find that coordinator that can
I think you also find, I worked over 20 years in a hybrid facility, and at the beginning of my career at the facility, I was dealing with older engineers in their late 50s, 60s. Then a newer generation coming up, and the newer generation is far more interactive compared to the old generation. I think part of it has to do with the stigma of education, of learning. I'm an engineer, I've learned, I need this respect type of deal. Versus the newer generation, it's a whole lot easier to come in and kid with them, joke around, make it easier. It makes it easier to learn, and in the work environment, it also makes it easier to get together.
Really does.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, wonderful to meet you. Pleasure. You're welcome to take any of those you like. So.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Speakers are going to switch out. We have the new speakers in the back. File into your table. And thank you very much for these speakers. The participants can just stay.
All right.